So what we're going to talk about tonight is the display set, the style, the styles, and the print sets. And these things are important because they determine how your screens are going to look, and they also determine what your formatting is going to be for your transcripts or your text drop down, I should say. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to click on Edit Display Sets. Okay, I have lots and lots of display sets here. I'm going to open up the one that is, in general, the display set that most people use. I'm going to click on the display set, and I'm going to click on the Open button, which is this yellow folder with the blue arrow coming out of it. Now, I tend to name my display sets for the information that changes between one and another of my display sets. So the things that change for me primarily are the font, the size of the font, the size of the page, and the line numbers per page. Now, this varies a great deal. Letter and legal normally vary only in if you are an official, you are normally working on legal paper. That is not true everywhere, but it is more true than not that officials work on legal paper and they produce 32 lines per page, whereas deposition reporters tend to work on letter size paper with 25 lines per page. Now, the 25 does vary from state to state to 24, 23. I believe the smallest number I've ever seen of lines per page is 23 or 22 maybe, but those are kind of rare. So I'm going to go over this specific screen. Over here, starting on the left, is the title, and I explained to you that I often make the title reflect what it is so that I don't have to go in and open it to know what the settings are. You guys do not have the same situation as me. You probably do not have over 100 display sets. But if you do court reporting, CART, captioning, if you do many things, then it may very well be that you do have multiple display sets. And there may be times as you go along in your career where you will have the desire to set different display sets. I do also have a display set that I call Easy to Read, which is something that I created so that when I'm in the scope phase, if I want the text to be big, it can be big, and then I can make it smaller before I go into the final phase of transcript production. So beneath the title, you'll see speakers 1, speakers 2. That means that where speakers 1 is concerned, every other speaker field is going to be that color. And with speakers 2, every other speaker field is going to be that color. Some people do change these things. That is completely up to you. The untranslates 1 and 2 work the exact same way. Speakers 1 and 2, like I said, are only the color of the speakers field and the color of the untranslates field. And these just show differently because we have every other one colored differently for the purpose of delineating one from the other. You can change those fields and it doesn't bother me at all. However, keep in mind that it should be light colors so that you can still see your text. And then below untranslates 2, you'll see dictated text. The dictated text is always black. I'd prefer that you leave it that way. In the beginning, we ask that you not change any of these fields between dictated text, correction, applied, keyboard, and conflicts. The reason we ask you not to change those things when you're new is because when you're first learning SpeechCAT, these colors represent very important aspects of the text, which I'm going to explain. All dictated text is black by default. When you perform a correction, the text of the entire utterance, even though you've only corrected one word, that entire utterance will turn green. Then when you go to utterance summary, listen to all of your corrections and verify that they are correct, and then click on the correct button. Your corrections are then applied. And after they're applied and the speech files are saved, the text turns that cobalt blue. And when there is a real-time rule used in your text, or you type something into your text, the text will turn red, letting you know that that's a keyboard edit. And when we make a keyboard edit, we cannot do correction on that text or anything in that utterance. So it's important that you see and realize what a keyboard edit is, what an applied correction is, and what a correction is. Now, the conflicts, first of all, the conflicts must be on. So the conflicts will appear in brackets, and every conflict option except the one that SpeechCAT thinks is correct will be in blue. The one that SpeechCAT thinks is correct will be in black. So the reason we ask you not to change those colors is so that when you have a question and you say, well, my text turned red, why is that? We need to be able to say, well, your text turned red because it's a keyboard edit. And if you change those colors around, it can cause a little bit of havoc in support. Once you know what you're doing, if you want to change the colors, that's fine. The dictation cursor is not something that most people use. It was designed to be something that you could use for when you wanted blanks to be filled in, usually by transcribers filling in medical documents. The current field is set to green. The current, that's probably the current screen, as in the current case list. And the field, I don't know what that field is. Do you know what that field is, Michelle? That last one on the left? I can't recall what that is. And then over on the right.
Is that the,
I can't figure that out.
That's for where the dictation cursor goes, because the dictation cursor is for fields.
Right.
And so those are all the fields, and the green one above it is for the one where it is in respect to the whole document.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you, Mitch.
You're welcome.
The script back and the script for, those are only for carton captioning, and they're used, let's say that you are doing a newscast and the newscaster sends you his or her script for the evening. You can actually see that script between your dictation and your speakers and untranslates. And some people like to change the color of the background so that they know that that's their script window and not their dictation window. The next field is the utterance. We ask that you not change that in the beginning either. The utterance is highlighted in this orange color when you turn correction on, and then it will highlight the utterance, and then you hit page down, it goes to the next utterance, and so on and so forth. We haven't gotten there yet, so don't worry about it. The background is the actual color of your dictation screen when you go to real-time or card or captioning. I like my background to be something other than white because I see so much white on the screen all day. So I like one of these gentle colors. If you want to change one of the colors, you click on the drop down arrow and then you can change it to any color you'd like. I try to stay with these top colors because I don't like anything that's too terribly bright. And then the next line gives you the option to bold, underline, italics, or all caps your text. That is up to you. For people that do CART, most of them do use a different font, something that's more readable. You can use any number of fonts. If it's here, you can use it. Of course, I would always suggest that you use something that is easy to read and comfortable on your eyes. But if you are a court reporter, you need to use what is reflected in your court guidelines or in your state guidelines for the way it's going to be turned in. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to see it in that font all the way through, but you definitely want to produce it in the font that meets the requirements of your state or the agency that you work for, or both. This is the size. The next one is the size of the font. That can vary anywhere from 12 to 14 for court reporting, and it can go all the way up to really large fonts for the CART and captioning. Well, specifically for CART, when someone is viewing, a lot of people in the CART world do use at least an 18-point font. Some people that have hearing problems also have eyesight problems, and that's the case for why someone would use a bigger font. Now, I told you earlier about having a display set that I call Easy to Read. And that display set I created only for myself for in the scope phase so that I could see it with a bigger font and be more comfortable while I was going through it. SpeechCAT actually has a feature that will bring it down to the font you want to produce it in when you go to the present phase. That is not something we set here. We set it in the style, which we're going to talk about next. So for now, I'm just going to say that this is the display set, sets all of this for what you are going to see in your dictation window and beyond. Now, below that is line spacing. You'll see that you can have single, 1.5, double, 2.5, or triple. I usually leave it with double. You can change it if you want. Sometimes CART people do change it. Most court reporters leave it at double. Then we get into our margins, top, bottom, left, and right. What Michelle discovered a long time ago is that if you have a top margin and a bottom margin of 1.3, it's going to get you pretty much 25 lines per page with double space. And so that is why the top and the bottom are set to 1.3. I have set my left to 1.5 and my right to 0.5. I've reflected a letter size page in the height and width of the page size in inches. And to verify how many lines per page I'm going to have with these margins, I can click on Get Lines Per Page. And it comes and tells me how many lines per page these specific settings are going to get me. That's what I want, so I'm going to click on OK. Now, the next box is Use Real-Time Margins, and if it's checked, and I have the margins set at 0.5 and 0.5 because I like to see all of my text. So this allows me to set my margins a little differently than it would be set if I didn't use real-time margins. These are set much smaller, and this is the way I like to view it. You don't have to view it the same way. Once you've made all your changes, apply and OK. Now we're going to go and learn about styles. So we're going to click on Edit and Edit Styles to get to the Style window. And as you can see, I've got many styles. You probably don't, because you don't have to have as many styles as I do. So I'm going to go to a generic style for Microsoft Word. And I'm going to click on the second icon, which is the open icon. And I always title it again for what it's for. MSW stands for Microsoft Word for me. And Microsoft Word is my preference. So that's what my generic is set to. You can set it to Corel Word Perfect if that is your preference. We find ourselves here when we enter the style in. You'll notice that there are tabs that run all the way along the top, and all the way at the end of that window. Make sure, here we are at the General tab. You can see next to Display Set that I've got the Courier New 12 letter 25 lines per page selected. If you click on the drop down, you'll see all of your options in your display set choices. You can set timestamps to be viewed in your real-time window. I like timestamps being the time of day. I don't much care for timestamps for 24 hours, but the military uses 24-hour time, so it's there for them. The timestamps in real time and scope are something I prefer, so I have them checked. I like markers adding punctuation, so I have that checked. This is not a captioning style, and so I do not have captioning adds new line after sentence because this is not for captioning. Then down here you see Use Speaker to Configuration. For those of you who are court reporters, you need to be able to represent a speaker in two ways. The first is in colloquy, and that's normally what we're doing. Most of our speakers, when we're identifying speakers, it's in colloquy. However, when the speaker changes, oftentimes we will see examination by all the way at the left margin. And I like to call that a byline. It is not truly a byline as we use that term in journalism, but it is the change of speaker from one person to another during the examination. And so you can call your speaker one and speaker two whatever you want. For me, COL represents colloquy, and BY represents examination by, cross-examination by, all of those. And I just call it by. The edit real-time settings for the sender and the receiver, those are about receiving and sending real-time text feeds. We'll talk about that much later in the course. The hard disconnect and open mic are also for other things that we're not going to discuss at this point in time. The hard disconnect is for captioning, and the open mic is for if you're going to use Dragon and just let Dragon figure out what everybody is saying via an open mic. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see Dragon uses feed governor, and then a send interval and average characters per second. This is for cart captioning, and so we don't use that. Capitalize all with exceptions is also for the cart captioning industry. The use dictation cursor is for fill-in fields, and the tilde moves dictation cursor is also for fill-in fields, and those two are for transcription, the transcription product. So now we're going to move to the second tab, which is speakers, and you can actually type in some default speaker names here. What I've done is I've typed in sort of players instead of the actual names, because it's easier for me to explain that way. What you'll notice over here on the right is that speakers 1 through 6 are set to colloquy, but 7 and 8 are set for a byline. So you'll notice that 2 and 3 and 7 and 8 are the same, 2 and 7, 3 and 8. And so if I wanted to show the plaintiff counsel speaking in colloquy, I would say SPE2. If I wanted to express that the plaintiff counsel is beginning an examination, I would say SPE7. And it would put by the plaintiff counsel instead of indent tab plaintiff counsel : 2 spaces text begins. Untranslates. We also have this untranslates box where we can put in terms that we want to always show up in our untranslates. I don't really think this is nearly as useful as the speakers, because I'm never going to have the exact same words every time I use this one style. But I suppose you could create a style specifically for a case if that were something that you wanted to do, but I just don't see it as useful as the speakers tab. We'll move on to the speaker formatting tab, and this is really crucial. So we have been able to reproduce just about any format that anyone has ever asked us to do with the features that you see here. So I'm going to take it starting on the left and go down, and then I'll do the right. The very first thing on the left that we see is indent. So let's say that I wanted an indent. This is in inches. So think of it like this. In 1 inch, there are 10 spaces. So if you wanted an inch wide indent, you would simply put a 1 here. If I click on apply, you see how that changes here in this box below. This is where you actually see what you're doing, what changes it's going to make. So let's say that I wanted to change this back to 0. It doesn't change it right away. But if I click on apply, then it'll change it. And now all you're seeing is a hanging indent of 5, 2 tabs before the speaker. You have to click in the box to the left of the option if you want to use that option. And then you have to specify the details of that option. So in order to say I want tabs before, I select this to say, yes, I want to use tabs. And then I put in the number so that you can see how many tabs you want to use. Let's say that I wanted the speaker's name to go in again. So watch here. I'm going to click on apply. And now you see it's 3 tabs in. You can change it back just as easily by clicking on apply again. If you wanted to use spaces before instead of tabs, you certainly could. You would click this box. You could also use it in addition to the tabs before. Let's say that someone for some reason was using 12 spaces, you could use 2 tabs, that's 10 spaces, and then add 2 here, apply, and it moves it over by 2 more spaces, then making it 12 spaces before instead of just 10. I can just deselect this and click on apply, and it's going to go back. I can choose to bold the text of the speaker. This does not bold the text that follows the speaker. It only bolds the text of the speaker. I can choose to underline the speaker. I can add a new line before the speaker. Now keep in mind that every time you use a marker, whether that be a speaker marker, a question, or an answer, a new line is placed before. And so when you say add a new line before, you're actually adding an additional line. So there would be 2 spaces before this began. So be careful with that, because sometimes people get confused about what that really means. Also, the new line after, I'll show you, is talking about the new line after the speaker. And so some people, Louisiana specifically, actually works like this. So there is no text after the speaker. It starts on the next line. And Louisiana actually makes it look, let's see, we would do tabs after. And if I did 2 and apply and turn the spaces off, then it would look like this. Capitalize is going to, I don't know what that does, because it always capitalizes the first word after the speaker, so I'm not quite sure what that capitalize does. That might be one of those things that's no longer even necessary. Okay, over here on the right, the symbol before the text. There is not often a symbol before the text in court reporting. Can you get all caps here? The caps here, Amanda, is only for the speaker itself. To get all caps in your entire document, you would want to go and do capitalize all with exceptions. Or you could also do caps in your display set.
That's not what I wanted. I wanted the speaker in all caps and bold.
Oh yes, the speaker is going to be in all caps and bold. It just doesn't look that way right here because that's not how the programmer wrote it. But this will always be in caps unless you write it in lowercase.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, unless you type it in lowercase.
Okay. That explains. Okay, thank you. That
no
explains.
Problem. Yep, that explains it. Okay, so the symbol following the text is almost always a colon. For the Q&A, it's going to be a period usually. And of course, you use it if you want to use it, but this is what you do. You put a check in the box, you put a colon here, and it'll make sure that your colon is after every speaker. Now, tabs after would only usually be used in a situation like this, where there was a new line after the speaker. Spaces after is normally what is used in a situation where there is no line after, because I'll show you, see how odd it looks with 2 tabs. So if I do this and I put 2 spaces in and apply, then it looks more normal. The forced character width is there because some people use this feature. I personally don't think it's ethical, so While I'm going to tell you that it's here for you if you want to use it, please don't tell me that you want to use it. I don't want to know. And so we're going to skip right over that and go to speaker 2 configuration. Okay, so speaker 2 configuration is for the examination. So some people want this to look like this. And you can certainly do that. And then you can just add the cross, recross, all of that stuff later. Some people just like the by, and that's okay too. All of the features are exactly the same. We're using a colon after and 2 spaces. You can set this up however it needs to look for your preferences. But all of the features are exactly the same. So it's just a matter of choosing which ones you want. We're going to go over to the Q&A formatting now. We've got a few more things in Q&A formatting. And that's because we have different requirements. In Canada, they're required to number their questions for an examination under oath. And so if you click on number questions and you click apply, you'll see this little pound sign here. And where this pound sign is, in your transcript, you'll actually see a number. And that relates to what the numbered question is. I didn't understand why they did that. The reason that they do it is because they're only allowed to ask so many questions in Canada for an examination under oath. And so that's why they number them. And so it's a pretty neat feature. Not one that I've seen anyone use in the US, but a neat feature all the same. There's also a feature for a new line before questions. And if you check it and click on apply, it basically just gives you a new line before each question. It does not give a new line before the answers because some people actually separate the questions by 2 lines so that the question and answer look like they're together. But then the next question has 2 spaces instead of just 1 between them. So that's just another option for you. Now we're going to move to the custom formatting tab. There are 3 custom formatting tabs. It is up to you to decide what you want to use them for, if you want to use them at all. The idea behind the custom formatting is this. Perhaps there are some parentheticals that are used quite often for you and you'd like to add them and be able to control what they look like. Some people will do 3 tabs before some of their parentheticals, and other people will simply indent their parenthetical. Otherwise, all of the other features pretty much are the same, except for this. This is where you put what you want the custom text to be. And you can decide what that is and how you want it to look. This also has a new line before it. That's what it looks like without a new line. When you imported, if you followed our Dragon instructions for creating a new user and you imported your marker file, you probably noticed a custom 2, and custom 3 marker in the SpeechCAT markers. And this is what they relate to. So you can call them whatever you want. I just use things that work all the time, like SCO. I can say that. It doesn't matter what it means, just that hard, constant heart volume, hard vowel sound used together is very strong. And so I use, I think, SCO, Ocho, and I don't know what I use the other one. I always use SCO and Ocho for 1 and 2, but anything that works well. Some people use this for jury entering the room, jury exiting the room. So it's up to you what you use these for. And the main reason people use these as opposed to just adding this stuff into the Dragon vocabulary is that this allows you to add formatting. So for these 3 things, you can add formatting. Now you can do many, many, many parentheticals and add them as voice strokes. And you can also add formatting inside them. So these are not the only ones that you'll ever make. These are just the easiest ones. Now we're going to move to replacement fields because custom 2 and custom 3 is the same thing. Replacement fields are determined, we take your transcript, we look at everything that changes from one transcript to another, and we highlight it. Everything that's highlighted, I make a replacement field for. These are the replacement fields that will show up in your new job screen. You can change them, you can delete things, you can edit things, you can have as many replacement fields as you like. Some people have very few, some people have lots. It really just depends on how much information you have to have on your cover and certificate pages. That changes from one deposition or court transcript to another. Now, as we enter these, if we end up entering our replacement fields and then going to layouts and includes, just keep in mind that if ever you are working with a layout and include and you need to come back over here into replacement fields and add another one, before you go back to actually use it, click on apply. That way it will show up. So let's pop over to layouts and includes. We call include files anything that you are going to bring into the transcript. Now, everything that goes in front of the transcript, we call cover. Everything that goes behind the transcript, we call cert. Not everything is a cover and not everything is a cert, but that's just the way we define these files. We use include files for other things as well, and we'll get to that later in the course. But for the purposes here, it would be everything that goes in front of or behind the transcript. This is also true for if you are a card provider and you want to provide some sort of a statement in the front of your job that says that the text has not yet been edited. We have real-time header and footer disclaimers is what we call them, and they're located under topic files on the C drive if you'd like to use them. We're going to click on open to look and see what the actual cover looks like. Now what we do is we take your cover pages, and here that's the caption with the appearances, the index, the exhibits, and then the title of the preceding section. What you may recognize is that everything that is a replacement field is begins and ends with an asterisk. And after the first asterisk, you see the word case in all caps. And then you see the actual field name, the replacement field name. So all of these things are going to be filled out when you bring your cover pages into the document during the scope phase. This will only be filled out if you filled out all of the fields on the new job screen. And I'll show you where that is in just a second. Some of you have probably already figured out where that is. Others of you that have been customers for a long time. So this is basically the include directory setup is what we call it. And it's where we insert all of the documents that we create as include files. Later on in the course, we'll talk about voice strokes. And those are files that could be one line or could be 100 pages, really. And you can do as many pages as you want. You can insert, we call these replacement fields here, right? So in order to insert the replacement field, I click on Insert. I scroll down to Case Fields, and all of the replacement fields that are available to me in this style are listed here. And so I can click on the correct one, and there it is. And it'll automatically be inserted. It could be the General Court of Justice or Superior Court or whatever. And every place you see asterisks, the word case, open paren, a word or words, close paren, and asterisk, that's a replacement field. Something else is going to be there when you merge these fields. Now, we set it up just the way we want to see it. If there's an indent, such as the speakers here, we put an indent before it so that when the speaker comes in, it looks right. And then if we're going to use Microsoft Word, we use section breaks to tell SpeechCAT, okay, listen, there's going to be some change between this page and the next page. And that's why I'm putting a section break here. What kind of change does that usually mean? It's pretty rare that I see a title page with a page number on it. It does happen, but it's rare. So almost always on the first page, there is no page number, and normally there are no line numbers. Some people do put line numbers on the cover page, the index page. I don't know why, because line numbers are designed to be used as reference inside the court. And so it's only when an attorney might hand someone a transcript and say, would you please read line 10 through 12 on that page? And they'll be able to see it because of the line numbers. But some people do put line numbers on the cover page as well as on the index pages. But let's just pretend for this example that there are going to be no line numbers and no page numbers on the first page. But then on the second page, page numbering will start. And then page numbering continues throughout the rest of the document. And then you'll notice there's another section break here after the exhibits, which is right before the proceedings. And that's because when it goes from exhibits to proceedings, line numbering starts generally on the proceedings page. And so that's why there's a section break there. When we're done, we always hit save and we close. Okay, back at the style editor on the layouts and includes page, we're going to click on open next to the cert. Okay, so here's our certificate page. So what you see is that it begins with this fancy concluded at end time thing. And that's where the ending time of the deposition goes. And then there's a section break, which also generally reflects a page break. And then the reporter certificate is here. And then we go into the witness certificate and the notary, the errata, and then whatever people call this, it's usually the cover that they put on their condensed copy, just sort of an extra cover page. And so once we make sure that where we need replacement fields, we've got them, everything is correct and spelled correctly. And so we click on save and exit. In order to select and assign the screen, instead of clicking on open, you click on browse, and it'll automatically take you to the place in SpeechCAT where all of the include files reside. So this is where all of the include files reside, and that's where you go and you pick your cover or your certificate. Now I'm going to open the layout. It's important that you understand that if you're using Microsoft Word, you are always going to have a layout. Your layout will be different from one style to another. If you have, say, different footers, if you have a different number of sections, and for those of you who are not familiar, let's see. Okay, you are seeing my Word. Are you seeing my Word screen, everyone? Okay, so what you see is these section breaks as they're viewed by Microsoft Word. This right here, this little paragraph mark, is called show hide. And if it's not on, you are not going to see your section breaks. It's important that you do see your section breaks so that you don't delete them. Because when you delete them, then everything goes out of whack. When we're creating the layout, we actually put lines into this file so that we can see what's going on with each section. As you can see, this particular one is a really old layout because we are way past SpeechCAT 7, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make this appear centered. Since I've got a little text box here, I'm just going to stretch out my little text box. And it allows me to go and edit the different headers and footers that I have when I spread these section breaks out and put each of them on the bottom of a page, like so. So that what you see is how each different section is going to behave once you have text there. So you can see that if I go on here. Okay, so the very first, what we see at the top, this is for the cover page. You'll see that there's no page number, no line numbering, but there is a large footer at the bottom for the court reporter's name, their description, certified court reporter, their number, mailing address, phone number, whatever you want to put there. And then beneath that, this is where the appearance and exhibit pages go. And then starting here where you see the line numbering is where the actual transcript goes. And then the very last section is where the certificate pages and everything else after the transcript go. As you can see, the page numbering is continued throughout, and this has a different footer. And so generally I make sure that everything is as I want it, and then I delete the extra spaces so that I don't have all of these extra spaces in my transcript when the transcript and the layout merge. Now, if you are a fan of WordPerfect, you don't use a layout. So I'm going to go ahead and close this document. So if I were creating this style for a WordPerfect layout, I would delete this whole line and have it be blank, because the transcript will drop into WordPerfect, and then we have to make macros in WordPerfect to do what we want it to do, which we normally do for and with our customers until it is the way they want it to be. Now, moving on to the next tab. This is the Indexes tab. In this tab, we are only setting up what indexes we want to have. I need you to think of your indexes as lists, meaning that certain things belong in the general index, certain things belong in the witness index, the exhibits index, the objection index, and you may not have any of those. Or you may want to get a little bit more complicated and move these things down. And you might want to say, okay, this is the plaintiff. Oh, I hate it when I do that. Witness index, and then we might want to have a defendant. Witness index, and then we might want to have same thing with the exhibits index. You can have up to 9 lists, so you can make the lists whatever you want them to be. And we'll get into how it is that you actually build the index when we get to scope. When you're done with how you want your indexes or your lists titled, you click on apply and move to the next. Now, the attachments tab is mostly for WordPerfect users. If we create a WordPerfect style for someone, we will attach the WordPerfect template here as an attachment. We also generally will attach the WordPerfect macros that we build here so that they all travel over to your computer when we email the style to you within the attachments list. Okay, moving on to present. Now, here beneath word processor is where you decide if you want to use MS Word or Corel WordPerfect. I guess you could use something else, and if you would, then you would click on other and you would browse to that word processor. This is character spacing, which again is just spreading out the text of your words. The use present font is pretty fun. If you recall earlier, I was talking to you all about using the easy to read font that was much larger and more comfortable for my eyes. Yet when I want to go to Word to print, I definitely want it to be Courier New 12. And so I would make sure that it was going to change from whatever my easy to read is back down to Courier New 12 double space prior to dropping into the word processor. And so that's what the present font does. We'll do apply. And using the custom size, by the way, here, this is custom line spacing. And so let's say that you wanted a custom line spacing of 484. you would use custom size and type in 484. And then it would exactly be that instead of double or single or triple. And you click on apply and move to the additional formatting tab. The additional formatting tab has just a few options on it. The add commas to numbers, that's for if you have a lot of numbers. Let's say it's a lawsuit and they're suing for damages. They're going to be talking about a lot of numbers, and most likely they'll be in the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So you're going to need to add the commas to numbers, and you can have that checked. You can uncheck it at any point in time. Block bad words is definitely used in broadcast captioning so that no foul language appears on the screen. Lowercase.org.com is just to make sure that the .org, .com, .net, .ca, .ur, .au, all those things are in lowercase when you are using all uppercase, which is normally what is done in broadcast captioning. The very last tab is the video capture tab. And I think right now video capture is not functional. I think that we need to do a repair on it. And so at this time, this feature is not working, so just ignore it for now. We're going to click on apply and OK. And that's going to take us back to SpeechCAT.